In this week's drive, we get just a bit too close for comfort, put history up on a pedestal, take a close look at the desert, and drive all day in a fishbowl. All this and more in this week's Drive. The 100th anniversary of the ADAC, the German automobile club, was celebrated in the streets of Stuttgart, the German city which is also home to car maker Mercedes-Benz. Cars and races spanning the last century were welcomed by the mayor in front of the castle in the middle of the city.
Welcome to Stuttgart.
This is the watch.
A large crowd of fans was able to get close to their heroes and their priceless machinery. Finnish star Kimi Raikkonen represented the MacLaren Mercedes Formula One team.
Kimi, what about the event here in downtown Stuttgart? What do you think about it?
I think so. It's nice. It's good publicity for the team, for Mercedes, and it's nice for the people to see the Formula One car.
The gathered fans knew they were in for a real treat when technicians wheeled out the MacLaren and Kimi appeared in his flameproofs. But first, there were other sights, and especially sounds, to savour for the crowd of 20,000 people. However, this was to be the main act. Getting a Formula One car to move under its own power is like the launch sequence for a moonshot. Note that Kimi's traction control is switched off. Cobblestones are hardly the surface on which to set 800 Formula One horses loose. Getting the car to spin round involves switching the bias of the brakes to the front wheels and holding them on with the left foot. Although those tyres are very grippy, they won't withstand so much power so suddenly. It's guaranteed that when those people go home, they're going to smell like burnt rubber. And it's almost certain that other people will move away from them on the bus or train. Raikkonen has had a meteoric rise to Formula One stardom, although his first corner crash out of the race in Germany has dropped him back to third in the championship, having led the title chase for several months. Michael Schumacher, who looks set for another podium and points behind Montoya, was let down, literally, by a flat tyre. Montoya is snapping at the German's heels and has displaced Michael's brother, who took himself, Raikkonen and Barrichello out of the race at Hockenheim. The late-season form shown by Williams has seen them close right up on Ferrari, with McLaren's challenge fading as they fail to get their new car through safety crash tests. In fact, it has been suggested that much of the reversal in Formula One fortunes this year has been down to the tyres used by each team. Some have Michelin, some fit Bridgestones. But what goes into a racing tyre? Well, that's a closely guarded secret, but we do know that there are about 220 different components, various steels, oil, natural rubber, zinc, silica, and man-made substances like Kevlar and polyester. The mixture is cooked at 170 degrees, cooled to 90, flattened and cut into strips. The results will be 79% rubber, 18% steel, and 3% textile. The strips are put into drums and reinforcing Kevlar strands are inserted for reinforcement, and up to 200 steel wires, thinner than a hair, are woven into the body or carcass of the tyre. The tread component of the tyre is the part which varies. There are about 80 different recipes to give different characteristics. Tyres for slick surfaces, for abrasive tracks, for races in hot or cold conditions. And even, it is rumoured, special tyres for certain drivers who require particular characteristics. Each tyre gets a unique barcode so that it can be identified in the flurry of a race meeting, perhaps on the other side of the world. The tread component is added to the carcass and it's all subjected to 16 tons of pressure and cooked at 300 degrees in a vulcanizer, which gives the familiar shape and which turns the plastic material into an elastic one. Michelin will make about 53,000 tyres for its Formula One partners this year. Ferrari use Bridgestone tyres, as do BAR, Jordan, Minardi and Sauber. The rest use Michelin's, and the recent rise of Williams and McLaren, Renault and Toyota has been attributed in part to better performance from their tyres. The Pocono Raceway is an annual stop on the NASCAR calendar, and the track is considered one of the best and most challenging in the United States. There were overcast skies at the start of the race, where the winner's average speed would be 127.7 miles an hour, in a race eventually slowed for 36 laps by 8 caution flags.
Come on, guys, 6-7. Now taking it down to 3.
The second caution came out when Robbie Gordon gave Jeremy Mayfield a gentle hurry-up nudge from behind. That push was enough to send Mayfield into the wall and end his day on the track.
The singular car of Robbie Gordon. I think that's
Later, on lap 74 of 200, Michael Waltrip got into the side of Mark Martin's car and pushed him sideways and into the wall. After hitting the wall, Martin slid back across the track to the infield as all the other drivers managed to avoid him.
There's where the radiator damage came in, when the left front came around and hit with the outside retaining wall.
Ward Burton just got underneath Mark into the... Looks like he got a little tap.
Four-time series champion Jeff Gordon was spun out by Ford driver Dave Blaney to finish 36th and dropping down to third place in the points standings.
But the problem is when you're that not going to have a good weekend.
Meanwhile, as the race was winding down, accidents involving Casey Mears and later this one for Bobby Labonte slowed the field and bunched them up for a total of 12 laps under caution.
Slid into the wall.
Ryan Newman, who started on the pole, wouldn't have been able to make the final 46 laps without stopping, but with the crashes he was able to conserve fuel. Newman's Dodge beat the Ford of Kurt Busch by 0.307 of a second, about 6 car lengths. He led for 88 of the 200 laps in just his 4th Cup race on the 2.5-mile triangular track. Paul Tracy felt betrayed when officials stripped him of provisional pole after he blocked other cars during qualifying, but he bounced back to win the pole for the race. Bruno Junqueira was given the provisional pole and the point that goes with it, but a crash for Dale Coyne Racing teammates Jeff Boss and Gautier Sales meant the first 2 racing laps were under yellow. Junqueira eagerly took the lead at the start. Too eagerly. On the first racing lap, the cars were 3 wide into the tight first turn, and rookie Sebastien Bourdais tapped third qualifier Roberto Moreno. He was out on the spot, and he wasn't happy. "We know how hard it is to start this race cleanly, so I was staying out of trouble," Moreno said. "Then someone who has never been here before tries the impossible and hits me." Junqueira stayed in front for 24 laps, but officials decided he had jumped the start and he was forced to let Tracy go past. Junqueira was stunned when told to let him through because the Brazilian thought his start was clean. Junqueira lost concentration, lapping half a second slower. Tracy pulled away, not because he was faster, because I was slower, he said. He might have been closer if he hadn't stalled his engine on the first of 3 pit stops, allowing Carpentier to take second place. Mario Dominguez had a wretched day, tangling variously with Monteiro, Servia and Bourdais in separate incidents, and eventually eliminating Patrick Carpentier, while the French-Canadian was running second on lap 61. There were no problems for Tracy, though, as the Canadian, resident in Las Vegas but a national hero north of the border, added this victory to his win 2 weeks ago in his hometown of Toronto. Tracy crossed the line nearly a third of the track ahead of Junqueira, and Bourdais finished third.
We had to sit behind Junqueira at the beginning because he jumped the start, but then they made the right decision and reversed us. And once I got in front, I was able to just pull away 6 seconds in like 5 laps. And then from there, we had it under control.
The European ASCAR Days of Thunder series continued at Rockingham in England. Series leader Ben Collins held pole for the first race of the day, 5th round of the season, after setting the fastest ever time over Rockingham's 1.5-mile banked oval. Collins had opened the field before Tony King crashed out on lap 16, bringing out the safety car. When the race restarted on lap 25, Collins's lead had disappeared, allowing John Mickle and Derek Hayes to get back into the race. But the caution flag will be waved again only seconds into the restart as Alejandro Linke spun on the way into turn 2, taking Stevie Hodgson and Olivia Plale with him. quick pit stops led to a change at the front, and Ian McKellar Jr. passed his teammate and team owner John Mickle on the 52nd of 60 laps. Mickle was well placed to reclaim the lead on lap 57, but lost control and crashed into the wall. That meant that the race finished under a caution flag, and McKellar cruised to the line for his second successive ASCAR Days of Thunder victory. He was joined on the podium by Michael Vergers, who had finished in second place, and third place Collins. McKellar therefore started the next race, round 6, from pole position. The yellow caution flags were waving only seconds into the race as Niklas Loven spun and took a luckless Linke into the outside wall again. But McKellar's hopes of a hat-trick of ASCAR wins came to an end on lap 15. He spun wildly and his bonnet had to be retrieved, bringing out the caution flags. Race leaders Vergers and Derek Hayes threw away their chances of a win after they failed to pit stop at the allocated time and had to serve a stop-go penalty. That allowed Ben Collins to lead, but traffic and a kiss with the wall saw Mark Proctor close up and take the lead on lap 55. Collins made a desperate charge from the final turn on lap 60, the two cars nose to nose on the run to the line. Looking to protect his lead, Proctor tried to edge Collins towards the outside wall, but the series leader wouldn't budge. The two cars touched, Proctor spun across the line and slammed into the inside wall. Collins took a photo finish second win of the series, while Vergers recovered from his stop-go penalty to claim third. Collins leads the title chase with Vergers third, just 3 points behind Colin White. In 2003, the Goodwood Festival of Speed celebrated its 10th anniversary, and the festival focused on some of the most memorable highlights from the 10 events to date. In addition, this year, the festival was a key part of Ford's 100th anniversary, and the company brought in many historic vehicles and erected a huge sculpture right in front of the stately family home of the Earl of March.
Well, the designers wanted to come up with something that would commemorate Ford's 100th birthday, which it is this year. And we wanted something iconic and dramatic, something that would really make a mark at the festival. And we came up with a design that basically is a theme of the one of the most famous events in Ford's motorsport history, which is the 1966 1-2-3 victory at Le Mans.
The GT40s were built to take on the Europeans, particularly Ferrari, in sports car racing. The name came from the fact that the car was just 40 inches or about a metre high. The GT40 had a V8 engine behind the cockpit, and the design is a favourite with replica and kit car builders.
They can't believe it's real cars that are actually on there, that we've trained them up and got them on the sculpture. So yeah, it's a real wow factor, definitely.
Henry Ford decided back in 1903 that after the USA, Britain was the most important market for him. I guess his Irish antecedents kind of made that decision for him. But of course, after that, it was very important for him to branch out into Europe, specifically into Germany and France. If you're making cars for Europe, those markets are so vital, they are so huge, that you've got to be there. Ford has chosen to celebrate our centenary here at the Festival of Speed simply because being 100 years old means you've got a hell of a lot of heritage. Here, you've got the absolute ideal opportunity to celebrate that heritage. And around us as we speak, we've got so many wonderful cars that Ford has made over the last 100 years.
There was much else for motoring enthusiasts to see, like this 1908 Benz Grand Prix car. Or here, like a works Mercedes-Benz W154. All manner of past and present racing exotica was on hand, and the racing event was a brief hill climb. Some machinery was just for looking at, but most of it was eventually fired up, even if it wasn't actually driven. The Benetton Ford, which took Michael Schumacher to his first World Championship in 1994. This recreation of the 9-litre 1926 Renault 40CV, which set the 24-hour world record at 141 kilometres an hour, is close enough to the original, which was based on a road-going model of the period. Formula Ford is a key step for aspiring racing drivers, and this one looks exactly like my first racing car, sadly long since sold. Motor racing at Goodwood began in 1936 when the then Earl of March held a hill climb through the park. This inspired his grandson Charles March to run the first Festival of Speed in 1993.
We're very proud of our 10th anniversary. Not sure whether it seems like a long time or a short time, but anyway, and a major part of this year's event is obviously the 100 years of Ford, and they played a huge part in everything that's going on over the weekend. Fantastic, huge display in front of the house, and wonderful collection of Ford racing history. So, no, Ford have been anyway, always a very big part of what we do. They've been involved in this event pretty much from the beginning, but this year's the big one for them and for us.
The winning GT40 in 1966 was driven by New Zealanders Bruce MacLaren and Chris Amon, with another Kiwi, Denny Hulme, coming second with Ken Miles. The cars finished side by side, but because McLaren had started further back on the grid, his car was deemed to have gone further in the 24 hours and declared the winner. This year's guests included Juan Pablo Montoya, David Coulthard, Jenson Button, Sir Stirling Moss, John Surtees, Sir Jack Brabham and his sons Jeff and David. Emerson Fittipaldi won the world title twice in his 11 years in Formula One, in 1972 and 74. But Ford engines powered all the cars in the 5 teams he raced for. And after days of all sorts of cars racing up the narrow 1.1-mile hill climb course, it was time for engineless soapbox racers to come hurtling back down. Not surprisingly, a Ford team won. And we'll look at gravity-powered racing later in the show. The rainy season in Japan is not perhaps the best time to race solar-powered cars. But the sun came out just in time, and the Japanese Met Office predicted fine weather for the 12th Alternative Energies Cup. There were none of the fumes or noise that marked the Grand Prix in October, but there was plenty of excitement among competitors as the cars were readied.
I think it's important that competition for the future has empathy with the environment, and this has. It's still exciting, has empathy with the environment, and we sat here in practice listening to motorcycles and cars and just got sick and tired of the noise. These are very quiet.
I wonder how you say claustrophobia in Japanese. You'll certainly hate that black helmet by the end of the day. The rain may have stopped, but the wind hadn't, and although it dried the track out, it made things difficult for the extraordinary racers. In the 8-hour endurance challenge, comprising 2 4-hour heats, Ashiya University's team Sky Ace Tiga led from the start, but was closely followed by Model S from Osaka Industrial University. Whereas other solar car races tend to follow straight lines, the 5.81-kilometre Suzuka racetrack has hills, hairpin bends, and even an overpass. Over 100 cars were entered by universities, colleges, and even schools from across Japan, as well as several teams from overseas, including the Australian Aurora team. Hiryu High School's entry, Shining, was running third behind Sky Ace Tiga and Model S. Not all the cars made it to the end, as Satohara High School's entry ran out of electrons late in the race, despite sharing a name with the more conventional Mercedes-Benz Works racers. In 5th place was the Australian Aurora vehicle team, winner of the last World Solar Challenge. Sky Ace Tiga averaged 71 kilometres an hour without using a single drop of petrol or creating any air pollution. Some solar cars can achieve even higher speeds than Sky Ace, reaching speeds of more than 100 kilometres an hour under ideal conditions. Sitting in a car that thin can't be easy, but if there's no petrol, I wonder why he's wearing flame-proof overalls. The 27th Jordan Rally attracted 49 entrants and included new stages, some below sea level and close to the Dead Sea. Prince Faisal Al Hussein, chairman of the Royal Automobile Club, flags away Abdallah Bakashab. The first leg had a spectator stage, and Nasser Al Attiyah was soon chasing down the early leader. Saudi Arabian Bakashab took the lead after the first stage, but his Peugeot 206 then suffered a gearbox failure on the final stage of the day, forcing him to retire, his third consecutive non-finish in the championship. Maruf Abu Samra, the highest-ranked Jordanian driver, moved into second at one point before rolling out on stage 7. Both Samra and co-driver Malak Hariri were unhurt. Qatar's Al Attiyah regained the lead by staying on the road and on the route as others dropped out. Almost half of the starters were eliminated on the opening 2 days as the loose surface and challenging roads through the Jordan Valley took their toll on the drivers. The final leg of the rally was over 437 kilometres and 10 stages, which took the drivers west with forests and mountain special stages, then to the lowest stage on Earth next to the Dead Sea, before returning to the finish in Amman. Alongside British co-driver Steve Lancaster, Al Attiyah claimed victory, the third round of the Middle East Rally Championships, winning by over 10 minutes from Cypriot pair Andreas Suloftus and Savas Laos in a Mitsubishi Lancer. Sheikh Abdallah Al Qasimi of the UAE finished third, driving a Mitsubishi Lancer, the leading Group N car. Hamad Al Sawaidi of Qatar was fourth in his Group N Mitsubishi Lancer, with Faris Bustami finishing as the leading Jordanian in fifth. Al Attiyah's win puts him on top of the overall standings with 20 points, 3 ahead of Al Qasimi. The next rally will be in Syria from September the 10th to the 12th. Around 400 competitors from around the world qualified for the 66th World Soapbox Championship in Akron, Ohio, by winning local soapbox derbies. Soapbox racing is popular in the US, with young enthusiasts spending countless hours building their own gravity-powered machines and testing their skills down a dedicated 291-metre track. The young derby racers were treated to a visit from real racing drivers Tony Stewart, Ricky Craven and Joe Nemechek. Nicholas Saberto of Newcastle, Pennsylvania won the Stock Division Championship, which is designed to give young builders and racers a learning experience. Boys and girls 9 to 16 compete in simplified cars built from kits purchased from the All-American organisers. The Superstock division gives competitors an opportunity to build a more advanced car model, also using a supplied kit but of a slightly more complicated design for the benefit of the veteran racer. Victory in that category went to Corey Harkins of Chicago, who won by an impressive margin. But it was Anthony Marulli of Rochester, New York, who won the Masters division, which offers boys and girls 11 to 16 a chance to race cars built from scratch or from a kit. 14-year-old Marulli has been racing for 6 years, spending hours working on his car and his racing technique with his father David. His hard work has paid off. Through wins at local, state and national level, he's won around $15,000 in scholarships. So, however fast you like your action, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.